Today our topic of discussion is heart failure. Let's see anatomy of the heart. As we know, human heart has four chambers: right atrium and right ventricle, left atrium and left ventricle. Tricuspid valve is between right atrium and right ventricle. Bicuspid valve or mitral valve is between left atrium and left ventricle. Pulmonary valve separates pulmonary artery and right ventricle, and aortic valve is between aorta and left ventricle. Blood from the body, that is deoxygenated blood from the body, enters to right atrium through superior vena cava and inferior vena cava. As we know, there are two circuits in the heart, that is pulmonary circuit and systemic circuit. Pulmonary circuit is between right heart and the lungs, and systemic circuit is between left heart and the body. Deoxygenated blood from the body is received by right atrium from superior vena cava and inferior vena cava. It then goes to left lung and right lung through pulmonary arteries, and then after oxygenation, this blood through the pulmonary veins comes to left atrium, and then it comes to left ventricle, and left ventricle pushes the blood through the aorta to the body. This is systemic circuit. Healthy 70 kg man has end diastolic volume of 120 ml during diastole. Diastole is relaxation, during relaxation. During systole, that is when heart contracts, both ventricle contracts, 60% of the blood is ejected. This is called stroke volume. 60% in the sense it is about 70 ml. Ejection fraction is calculated by stroke volume divided by end diastolic volume. As you know, stroke volume is about 70 ml and end diastolic volume is about 120, and multiplied by 100 it gives about 60%. After systole, the remaining blood which will be in both ventricle is about 50 ml. This is called end systolic volume. Now let's see heart failure. As we know, heart is a pump which pumps oxygenated blood to all the tissues. When this pump fails to do its function, it is termed as heart failure. Hence, the definition is it is a clinical syndrome of cardiac pump dysfunction in which heart cannot pump the blood to adequately meet the demands of peripheral tissues. That is, oxygen demand by the peripheral tissues is not fulfilled by the heart. As we know, cardiac output is equal to heart rate into stroke volume. Stroke volume depends upon three factors, that is intrinsic health of the myocardium and preload and the afterload. Intrinsic health of the myocardium can be disturbed during ischemia. Cardiac output is heart rate into stroke volume. Cardiac output is about 5 liters. Our heart beats for about 72 times per minute, and stroke volume is about 70 milliliter per second. And this stroke volume of about 70 milliliter per second depends upon intrinsic health of the myocardium, which is disturbed during ischemic heart disease due to necrosis of the myocardium. And then it also depends on preload, that is end diastolic volume, that is volume in the ventricles, and it also depends on afterload, that is the resistance, which is called mean arterial pressure. This has to be overcome during systole. And right heart has to overcome the pulmonary vascular resistance, and left heart has to overcome the systemic vascular resistance. These are disturbed, that is main cause for heart failure is work, that is volume overload and the pressure overload. Work overload is caused during valvular heart disease, hypertension, and ischemic heart disease. Now let's see high output failure and low output failure. What is high output failure? As we know, cardiac output is about 5 liter, but this cardiac output about 5 liter is not enough by the body tissues. Here, pathologically increased demand on cardiac output. This results in cardiac output states. There are some reasons like metabolic disorders like thyrotoxicosis, nutritional disorders like beriberi, and even during pregnancy. In these conditions, there will be increased demand due to increased metabolic activity. And in some conditions like excessive blood flow requirements, the oxygen in the blood is not enough for the body tissues. These conditions include systemic arteriovenous shunting, chronic anemia, and Paget disease. Now let's see how these conditions lead to high output failure. Thyrotoxicosis. Thyrotoxicosis is defined as increased thyroid hormone in the body. Due to increased thyroid hormone, there will be increased peripheral metabolism of the body. Hence, demand for tissue for the oxygen and nutrients will be increased. Normal cardiac output is about 5 liter, but body tissues demand will be about 20 liter per minute. Even after meeting this amount of blood, after some time blood undergoes work overload, so heart fail to meet this demand, hence undergo high output failure. And the second cause is pregnancy. When pregnant with more than one fetus, she has to meet her own demands plus the fetus demand. If this is not met by the heart, this leads to high output failure. That is, demand of the oxygen by the tissues is increased, but the heart fails to meet this demand. This leads to high output failure. And the next cause is beriberi. Here there will be deficiency of thiamine, and this leads to peripheral tissue dilation, that is vasodilation. This leads to pooling of blood in the venous system. This pooling of blood leads to low cardiac output. Hence, even after increasing more than 5 liters, after sometimes heart fails to meet this demand, hence undergoes high output states. And some of these other conditions include anemia, Paget disease, and AV shunting. In anemia, HB level, that is hemoglobin level, will be less than 3 gram per liter. That is, oxygen in the hemoglobin will be decreased. 3 mg per, normally it will be about 15 gram per dl, but it is now 3 gram per dl. For meeting the supply of demand of tissues, heart should increase at least 5 to 6 times. But when heart fails to meet this demand by the tissues, heart undergoes high output failure. During Paget disease, here the metabolic turnover of the bone will be pathologically increased. That is, anabolism and catabolism of the bone will be severely increased. That requires more blood, and when heart fails to meet this demand, it undergoes high output failure. Now let's see low output cardiac failure. This is the most common heart failure. This is caused by mostly left heart. Here the heart is unable to meet the normal cardiac output that is demanded by the body tissues. There are few main causes, that they are myocardial contractility failure, increased preload and increased afterload, and rate and rhythm disturbances. Myocardial contractility failure is due to intrinsic and extrinsic causes. Intrinsic causes are ischemic heart disease, hypertrophy and dilated heart, and infiltrative disease like amyloidosis, sarcoidosis, and extrinsic disease like the donorobicin, which damage the heart, and negative inotropic agents, and due to metabolic acidosis, and due to alcohol. Increase in preload is due to mitral regurgitation, tricuspid regurgitation, and aortic regurgitation. What happens during increased preloads? Let's see now. As Frank Starling mechanism, increase in filling volumes dilate the heart. That is, increase in filling volumes, increasing slight amount of volume dilates the heart. This increases actin myosin crossbridge formation, and this leads to increase in contractility and stroke volume increases. This is for small amount and small duration of time. And as Laplace's law states, pressure is directly proportional to tension and pressure is inversely proportional to radius. Now let's apply this concept. If heart is so much dilated, which is one cause of low output failure, here the radius will be severely increased. So the pressure will decrease as pressure is inversely proportional to radius. Normally the radius of the heart is 5 cm and tension produced is 600 units. And pressure about 120 milliliter in the systemic arteries is produced by this, that is tension of 600 units divided by radius of 5 cm. When heart dilates, the heart can dilate up to 20 cm for the same tension. When this happens, pressure decreases up to 30 millimeter per mercury, 30 millimeter mercury, which is not enough to overcome the mean arterial pressure, that is systemic arterial resistance. Hence the dilated heart has more preload, that is end diastolic volume will be more. End diastolic volume stretches the myocardium too much beyond the physiological limit, that is more and more blood accumulates in the ventricles. This leads to pressure to decrease more. When preload increases, the radius increases and the pressure decreases. Hence, pressure to overcome the mean arterial pressure is not enough. Now let's see some of the causes for increase in preload. There are some causes like mitral regurgitation, tricuspid valve regurgitation, and aortic regurgitation. Mitral regurgitation is most common. Here what happens, this is the normal left heart during systole, that is mitral valve is closed and it will be receiving blood from the lungs, and during systole it will be contracting and pushing the blood through the aorta to the body. And what happens during mitral regurgitation is, as we see here, this mitral valve is not fully closed. Hence during systole it will be pushing blood through the aorta to the body, and also it will be pushing the blood to the left atrium. This causes left atrium to be overfilled, and during diastole this blood from the left atrium, that is blood from the lungs, and blood that is went during left ventricle systole, both blood fills the left ventricle. This leads to increase in preload, that is end diastolic volume. After some progressive stages, This increase in end diastolic volume preload for this same tension, that is of 600 units, is not enough to ejaculate the increased preload to the body. This leads to dilation of the left ventricle. That is excessive preload leads to dilation of the left ventricle due to mitral regurgitation. Hence we can summarize that left ventricle excessive preload leads to excessive left end diastolic volume. Hence heart undergoes volume overload. First there will be hypertrophy and then dilation simultaneously. During volume overload there will be hypertrophy and dilation simultaneously. Hence excessive preload leads to excessive end diastolic volume, and excessive end diastolic volume stretches beyond the physiological limit. So Laplace law states that pressure is directly proportional to tension and inversely proportional to radius. If radius increases for the same tension, this pressure will not be enough to push the blood during systole. This causes heart failure. Now let's see afterload problems. Afterload is nothing but the resistance to be overcome during systole by the ventricles. This is also called mean arterial pressure. Left ventricle has to overcome systemic arterial resistance and right ventricle has to overcome pulmonary arterial resistance. When there is increased afterload, heart has to produce high tension to overcome the resistance. If the demand is beyond the physiological limit, this leads to hypertrophy and this leads to pressure overload. In pressure overload, there will be hypertrophy and then after some time there will be dilation of the ventricle. Unlike in volume overload, there will be hypertrophy and dilation of the ventricles at the same time. Now let's see causes of excessive afterload. Systemic arterial hypertension and pulmonary arterial hypertension are the two causes for increased afterload for left ventricle and right ventricle respectively, and aortic valve stenosis and hypertrophic obstructive cardiomyopathy and coarctation of aorta. Then now let's see other cause of low output cardiac failure. When there is rate and rhythm disturbances, this is mainly for left heart. When there is bradycardia, that is decreased heart rate, there will be less number of heartbeats per minute. This leads to less cardiac output reaching the body tissues and this leads to low cardiac output failure and tachycardia. In tachycardia, even though there is more heartbeats per minute, but this more number of heartbeats per minute decreases the diastolic time of each heartbeat. That is diastolic. This diastolic time is more important because ventricles fill during diastole, that is end diastolic volume is filled during the diastolic time. If diastolic time is reduced, the filling of the ventricles will be reduced, hence this leads to low output cardiac failure. Now let's see what happens during cardiac hypertrophy, the pathophysiology and the progression to the heart failure. When there is sustained increase in mechanical work of the ventricle, that is maybe due to work overload or volume overload or beta adrenergic receptors activity, this causes myocytes to increase in size, that is cellular hypertrophy. What happens during hypertrophy is there will be increased protein synthesis for the formation of additional sarcomeres, that is for actin and myosin for contraction, and there will be increased mitochondria production also. And these hypertrophic myocytes will have multiple enlarged nuclei. These multiple enlarged nuclei divides itself without the cell division. This leads to DNA ploidy. If this is the hypertrophied ventricle, there will be increase in size of the myocardial cells and increase in number of DNA, but there will be no capillary increase. This is the main point to be remembered. Due to no increase in capillaries, the demand for oxygen and nutrients will be increased. So oxygen consumption will be increased by this hypertrophied ventricle. Hence, this hypertrophied ventricle is more vulnerable to ischemia. And the other mechanism of hypertrophy is it is also accompanied with deposition of fibrous tissue. This also leads to increase in resistance during diastolic filling. Due to increase in size of the myocardial cells and due to fibrosis of the ventricular cells, the end diastolic volume filling will be decreased. Now let's see the difference between pressure overload hypertrophy and the volume overload hypertrophy. In pressure overload hypertrophy, there will be no new sarcomeres arranged parallelly, that is, the thickness will be increased. Thickness of the sarcomeres will be increased. The causes of pressure overload hypertrophy is hypertension and aortic stenosis. And in the volume overload hypertrophy, the new sarcomeres assemble in series, that is, there will be increase in size, leads to dilation of the ventricle. The causes for volume overload hypertrophy is valvular regurgitation. And there are some more points to be remembered. And systemic hypertension, ischemic heart disease, aortic stenosis, mitral regurgitation, and dilated cardiomyopathy, heart weighs more than 2 to 3 times the normal. And in conditions like aortic regurgitation and hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, the heart increase in weight by 3 to 4 times. As we can see in this picture, the figure A is hypertrophied left ventricle, and first figure in B is hypertrophied left ventricle without dilation. This is the normal left ventricle, and this is dilated left ventricle, and this is the normal myocytes arranged and the normal size of the cells, and this is the hypertrophied cells with increase in size of the cells, and there is increased DNA within these cells. Now let's summarize the hypertrophied process. During hypertension, that is due to pressure overload, in valvular disease, that is due to pressure overload and volume overload, and in myocardial infarction, that is due to regional dysfunction due to necrosis plus with the volume overload, this increases the cardiac work. As we saw earlier, this increases the pressure overload, volume overload, increases the cardiac work. This cardiac work leads to stress within the ventricular cells. This stress, according to Frank-Starling law, increases the size, that is, contractility increases, that is, cells stretches to a certain limit. Beyond physiological limit, this leads to hypertrophy or dilation. That is, during the process of hypertrophy and dilation, there will be increase in heart size and mass, and there will be protein synthesis also. And there will be induction of immediate early genes and fetal genes program which were ended during fetal stage, but during hypertrophy condition, these fetal gene program will also be seen, and there will be abnormal proteins, and there will also be fibrosis, and there will be inadequate vasculature. That is, in the pathological hypertrophy, there will not be increase in capillaries. This process leads to cardiac dysfunction. This leads to heart failure or arrhythmia or neurohumoral stimulation. Now let's see some good news about hypertrophy. This is only in physiological hypertrophy. Regular exercise, aerobic exercise, these all lead to volume overload plus the increase in capillary density. Unlike in pathological hypertrophy, there will not be increase in capillary density, but in physiological hypertrophy there will be increase in capillary density. That is why for the hypertension patients aerobic exercise is suggested, and regular aerobic activity leads to decrease in resting heart rate and BP. And let's see what happens in strenuous exercise like weightlifting. Even during this exercise there will be mild hypertrophy, but there will be secondary reoccurring Walsham maneuvers. This weightlifting and severe exercise are less beneficial than the regular exercise and aerobic exercise like walking and running.